the shortcut, I'll just ask them to do it instead. Can you just, whatever is your save, can you press Control?
All right. Let me close some stuff over here. Can't show you guys all the secrets. Cool, we're live. I don't have so I don't have a big topic necessarily to cover today, but I wanted to try and see if we can get you guys working through a couple different things. First, I wanted to give an opportunity, or maybe later, if nobody has anything right now, an opportunity to ask questions about React stuff. If you want to see some examples of, just about anything, we can try and work through an example of something at this point. Because we've introduced most of the major concepts of just React. We haven't gotten into a lot of the ecosystem and other things, but the major React concepts we've at least touched on. But the other more important thing I hope for you guys is I've started to build out a set of exercises. These instructions are very bad. I need to update all of them. I've started to build out a set of exercises for people to be able to work through to get some hands-on practice. And so the one thing I did want to do today was hopefully this is going to work. And if not, we'll give it a go again another time. But I want people to, what you'll probably do is log into your Cloud9 environment. And I'm going to have you pull this down into a separate folder from where you've been working on any other projects. And then be able to start working through these exercises. And like I say, hopefully all this will work. I'm also going to post real fast. I'll post a link to this repository as well as to individual branches as we move forward. But last class, we started working on that sort of clock example, and that's going to be the basis for what will be our stopwatch that we're going to build out. That'll include a lot more, right? Like showing the time, being able to start the stopwatch, do some lap times, probably be able to set alarms that'll go off at different points in time as well. So we're going to use that as sort of the basis. But what you should be able to do is pull down the current version of that project from this GitHub repository. And then going forward, after we work through a set of examples, people have had a chance to work through them. In the following class, I'll let people know what the tag is that they can pull, and I'll give the exact command for pulling down the latest version of that project so that everyone will be able to stay at the same point in time, up to date with where we're at, as opposed to falling behind. But this will be, it should be pretty much the same project. You'll just be pulling down different branches or different tags from it as we work through them for the rest of the class. But until then, or today, the top thing I want to work on is this React workshop. So this is being based off of somebody else's workshop that they had, and found it really, really handy. But it takes a little bit of work to get used to. So I posted the link to the GitHub page to pull down the current version or the latest. This is the link you can use to clone it, or if you go up on GitHub from the link that I already posted, you can click this clone and then copy this link. So I'm going to post this link as well, but I'm going to post it with the instructions of what you will run. So when you're in your Cloud9 environment or wherever you want to do development, I would suggest Cloud9 just because it'll make it more uniform and we'll have to deal with less changes. So you don't need to go into a separate folder to start with. You can be right there in your workspace folder, the root of it, on your command line. And then you should be able to run this command to pull down this repository from GitHub. And it should create a React workshop folder for you. And from there, we will be able to take the next steps to hopefully get people working through this and practicing these workshop steps. So I'm going to give people a little bit of time for that. But did anybody have any topics or any questions they want to talk about with React? Anything you want to see that we haven't necessarily seen yet, or want to go over again. I know Chris has several things that he wants to get to that we haven't necessarily gotten to, or talked about in depth, but no questions right now on anything. At this point, the exercises I have up there are all just based on prop-based work, so I haven't gotten to the state-based exercises yet. But who's up there pulling down this Git repository so far? People fetching that? All right. So once you pull that down, there are some instructions up here. They're a little bit off, but not too far off. What you should be able to do is follow at least these steps. You've cloned it. And then if you go into your React workshop, you should be able to npm run setup, which I hope should work. I think I'm going to go ahead and pull this down into another folder on my system just to check and see if all of this is working as well. Versus
Give me like 20 errors.
When you ran setup?
Yeah, setup.
All right, I'm going to pull it down into a separate folder and see if I can. Let's see what happens. So, React Workshop.
Workshop, right?
Yeah, that's what I want to. My goal with this is that these will be hands-on exercises for people to work through, where what you'll have is a set of failing tests, and then you will do the work to get the test to pass, essentially. And so there's a lot of. I'll walk through what the structure of this looks like in a minute as well, because there's just a lot of having you guys really try and work through them before you do anything else, because all the answers are in there, right? It's not like anything's hidden. It's got the solutions to the problems. But the goal is for you to try and work through them. But you'll also have a lot of reference code to be able to look at and read that's not too large as a result of this project, I hope. All right, so let's see what I get. So I got to this point. Is anybody else getting here? No? It's failing before then? All right. I can make this bigger, by the way. A little easier to see. Well, it is a pretty horrible font for you guys. Sorry.
I did the npm run setup. Error, unexpected token. Create object in runtime.
That's what I got.
Object.
All the errors.
All the errors. All right. Oh, you might need to run. You know what you might need to run first? You might need to run npm install. So try running npm install first.
In React Workshop?
Yeah, in the React Workshop folder, yeah. I think yes. I don't know if, what?
Mine's thinking about it.
Install will probably take a little while.
Yeah, let's see.
It says they have a sip of coffee.
Yeah, this project was a little finicky for me to get working, which is why I wouldn't be surprised if we have some problems. I'm hoping I got it fixed. Warnings aren't a problem during the install, probably. It sort of happens all the time, which is annoying. I really hate the fact that you just have to get used to it for NPM, because it teaches you to ignore them, which means when you do have one that matters, you're going to miss it. Like,
Basically, it's a lot of, you should upgrade to the better version of such and such.
right.
Is what my one was on. Or the latest version, yeah.
Hopefully, once npm install finishes for people, you can try this npm run setup again. I hope it'll work. Now I need to update all the tutorial stuff here because it's all wrong after this saying where to go. So people are going to have to watch me showing you what files to go into instead of that. Oh, speaking of which, I should change my what am I looking for here? Change this to the one that works better for class. There we go. I can close that. Open this guy. All right, is install finished for anyone?
Yes. Still all the same here.
All the same errors. What's that?
How much like notifications?
Oh man. All right.
I'm gonna just post my little message.
Let's see what's going on here.
It's the same exact one. I think.
That's fine. You can. I don't need to see the earlier ones. I just see these last ones. All right. Let's see here.
So unexpected to
Yeah.
all of them.
Scroll up. Oh, yeah, that's good. All right. Favorite new type node space dash B. I want to do a version of node here.
Oh,
611 off that too. Let me go see if I'm running something different locally. All right.
no, it's inside my workspace for the React class. It's just
I know.
folder. Is that a problem?
No. Maybe it's working on mine because I'm running 8, which would be a little weird. But
You're running.
well, I am locally, yeah.
I'm running 6.11.
Yeah.
Do you have any errors? It's not loaded. Maybe upgrade?
So let me see if I can. Yes, you have news that hasn't changed in forever. Thank you. And
Use later. Exciting.
I didn't say that out loud. Oh, there we are. All right. Let me try this whole thing instead of Cloud9, just like you guys. Is what you get when you use a different environment than your other people. Cloud9 is definitely feeling the strain. I don't care about that terminal. Let me go pull stuff down the same way as everyone else. Oops, I don't want to do that. Go away. All right.
So maybe we just need to upgrade the node then.
I'm gonna check. I don't know if it's gonna be easy for us to do that necessarily.
I'm just saying that casually, like I even know what it
Right.
means, but that seems to be what it's indicating.
Maybe. It could be a lot of other stuff that's going wrong here.
I think my install thing might have finished. I'm not really sure. It's just like a bunch of lines branching out, no more lines.
No, that's let that go. It will show again the dollar sign and you have the opportunity to type again. But that always happens when you do
No, I
this.
can type now.
Oh, you add your background?
I can type now.
Okay, that is that happened last time we did it.
I've obviously asked this question before.
Huh?
All right, so we've got Node Version Manager installed, so that might work. If this stuff doesn't work, then we'll try that. Verify.js.
What's the command to run the tests?
What's the command to run the tests?
Yeah.
If you just want to see if the tests pass after having done the other steps, then I would run npm run test:final, because that'll run it against the final version of the code, which should have passing tests. But once people have the other stuff working, I think, then it's npm run test. And what that'll do is run tests against the versions of the code that you need to change to get the code to pass. Close this, that's wrong. So it's yelling about something in here. What could it be yelling about? It's yelling about line 20. And it's yelling about it because of the wonderful things he does. Because it has a comma here, I bet, which is really weird. All right, I'm gonna wait for everything to get installed first before I try and move forward.
Wait, what's that at the end of install? Is that's the close of the, okay, it's the close of the It looked like a star to me. I don't know my glasses. Let me put my glasses. You know the line 19. I thought it was.
Oh yeah.
You did the tick mark and then a star for some reason.
No, it's really ugly code that's commented in all sorts of different ways, and then
Oh my God, I found the issue. It's like.
the strings are sometimes single quoted and sometimes double quoted. It's quality stuff. My system is totally stuck on this npm install, just like everyone
It takes
else's.
a while, and then it's like, all of a sudden they'll do like a little piece, and then I'll wait for a little bit. A lot of waiting.
All right. So I'll bet you it is the npm or the Node version, because of what exists up here in this code. This is why, I don't know. This is why I don't like people who always assume everyone has the latest version of stuff and write their code that way. Because this is, I think, something that was only allowed recently in JavaScript. We should be able to, I think, but I want to double check that. All right. Yeah, should be done soon. Any minute now. There we go. All right, I'm gonna try this again just to see, but I'm sure it'll fail the same way. I'll bet you could also fix it by changing this one line up in here, but I don't know if I necessarily want to do that. I mean, I'm gonna give it a shot real fast, but I just blow up somewhere else.
I tried changing the version, and I think it looked like it installed for
Oh yeah, it just blows up here. See, same problem, exact same thing. You installed the newer version?
Yes,
This is gonna keep blowing up. All right, let's try and install a newer version. So let me see. NVM list.
I had saved and
So what you should have on your system is actually there's something on your Cloud9 environment called Node Version Manager, NVM. So if you type NVM list, then you should see a list of the Node versions that are already installed on your system. If you want to, let's go around. What do people have installed?
I have 6.11.2 and 8.10.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I don't know why we have a newer one and we're not using it. All right, so you don't have it. All right. I'm just gonna type NVM and let's see -H. So you should let's just make sure everyone has the latest. So or something approximate to it. So you should be able to do something like NVM ls-remote, but you're going to get a long list here because it's pretty much every version of Node that's ever been released. Now I think I'm going to check if 8.10 is good enough, and if so, I want to get us all on that. But if you don't have that already on your system, then you should be able to do NVM install v8.10.0, and that should install that version of Node. If it is installed, I believe it's used. Let me double check, but I think it's just used. So yeah, so you do NVM use 8.10.0, and then it'll tell you that that's what you're using. You can always double check it by typing node-v, and it'll show you the version you're using. And then npm run setup. Let's see if that fixed our issues. All right, now it's happy. Yeah, so the person, everyone's gonna get a little lesson in JavaScript that you probably didn't need to know right now. JavaScript for the longest time didn't support what was known as trailing commas. So if you wrote like a list of items, like if I had a JavaScript file and you know, it was var list equals, and it could be any sort of list. It can be an array. It can be like, you know, object stuff or whatever. But if you had a list like 1, 2, 3, 4, you'd have to write it like that without a comma at the end. Which of course you're thinking like, well, why would I have a comma at the end anyways? That's silly, etc. But what happens a lot of times if you're creating a long list of things or you're creating a big object literal, you may be like, oh, let me just add an extra entry here, and you forget to put your comma up here. And so then you're breaking. And so a common pattern people wanted to be able to do was have a comma at the end of every line already so that they didn't have to change a second line if they added another line. But not all JavaScript engines supported that because it wasn't part of the spec. They did add it to ECMAScript 2017, I think, technically added support for trailing commas to the language. So now anything that is compliant with that should support trailing commas. But that's what was going on in this was, you can see that there were these commas hanging around like after this console.info or here at the end of this. And those commas were causing the problems.
Very important.
Yeah.
How did you get it to do the emojis?
I didn't do anything. It just did the emojis. You mean the little celebration emoji? It just worked. It didn't give you the celebration emoji?
I know how.
Oh, how? I didn't do any of that. I stole this from someone else. You'll have to look at their code. Yeah, I don't know. So how about after people have done that, who's got it? It's just loading. All right. All right, so just put your hand up, say something when your setup is done.
You already have the version installed. Is it an NVM?
Yeah, it's NVM use and then the version number. So it's, I can copy that into the Slack.
How do you get the?
If you do tiki marks, if you do the back ticks, yeah, I can never remember the name of them.
What did you call them?
Tiki marks. I don't know what they're called. I'm a programmer. I don't know this stuff. Why would I know the technical name of something that I use all the time? I don't know. Squiggly brace? Squiggly brace. I was on a site the other day, and whenever you hovered over a link, it went from being underlined to like a squiggly moving across under the link. And I was like, yeah, that's not obnoxious. What? Yeah. It's like the old marquee tags or blink tags. People probably don't even know these exist, do they? I'm going to show you old bad HTML. Versions of HTML. Oh yeah, this stuff totally existed. Oh yeah, I don't even think modern browsers will even render this. Yeah, built into HTML. You know it. What? Marquee. This was important to the language. And we also, because we've got all these important things in HTML early days, we also really needed a blink tag. Let's see if it'll show it here. I'm looking for another one. Oh yeah. Very important to put your text in blink.
Right next to it.
Yes. Obsolete. Do not deprecate it. Obsolete.
Wait, what did I say?
Right. It's a trash can.
Thumbs down, trash can.
It makes your text blink. Hey. I may actually give us, I sort of love these things, and so I may have an assignment where we do this exact thing with some React code or something. We already have most of the building blocks. We know how to do a timer. We know how to update something every second. All you need to do is do something like maybe conditionally render something, and you can duplicate this yourself. That's right. And now you can change the timing. Okay, who's got their stuff up and running so far? Awesome. So the next step here will be to run npm run. So that your tests passed if you did this. So we know your test passed. So do npm run test. And now is all your tests should fail. I hope. Oh, it's going to tell you there's no new tests. So then press A once it does that. It should run all of your tests, and you should have a bunch of failing tests. Cross my fingers that this is correct. npm run test. Just test. So now you should see a bunch of failing tests. Awesome. So what we're going to do, what this will be is, unless I want to get feedback from you guys telling me how easy this is to work with or not easy, etc. So open the source folder, src, and then inside of there's a props folder. So I'm going to try and break stuff out as we continue to build on this into different folders for the topic that's being taught. You need to open you might need not be in your React workspace. Open your React workspace folder, and then you should have a src folder source.
I have SRC, and then it has exercises and exercise final, but they're not inside of it.
They're not inside of props.
Can we open that SRC that's inside of
Open the src that's inside of React.
the React Workshop folder?
Yes, that's inside of the React Workshop folder. And then do you have a props folder?
I mean, everything else is there.
You don't have a props folder? Okay. And
Yeah, everything else, right?
interesting.
I just
For me, it's inside of the SRC.
Yeah, that's
Then I have props.
all right. I'm a little weirded out right now. I'm going to come look at some people's systems. Getting this stuff in the places I thought they were going was like my hardest thing to do. Yes. All right. Oh yeah, this is not right.
At the end of the test, it doesn't go back to the terminal. Should I press something?
So these are like all of the tests that came from the stuff that they'd already had. How do you? Did you not? All right. did you not clone my project? Did you clone React Workspace Workshop, but not my one that I posted?
Right. The one that you posted on Slack?
Yes.
No, I think this
Uh,
one.
Oh, I did the
Sure.
one from the page, the Cirilla.
That should be okay too. Maybe
Cirilla.
not.
How do you say your last name?
Cyrilla?
Cirilla.
It's okay, don't worry. I can't say my last name right. I practice it sometimes. If you hit Q, it'll put the tests. So, all right, I need to go look at what's up there because maybe it doesn't have my.
No, it says,
Wait, I just
slash,
pulled it down though, so.
it says / Kent D Dodds.
Oh, so here's what happened. Yes. Okay, I've got what happened.
So that was his, not yours.
Here's what's going on. Ha! I told you I need to update the instructions. So people probably went up here to this nice, not this, but the nice documentation, and said, ran this git clone command, which I need to change. So I'm going to change that right now and update this because this points to the original thing that I was branching from and not mine. Instead, you needed to clone this repository. And so I posted the link to it. But if you're at this repository, you can also get to it from clicking this clone or download button and probably going to use this. Use HTTPS if that's not what's already checked in yours.
Now, should
And then this
I
will be the link.
redo it?
Yes,
Okay.
you should redo it. I'm going to go update this documentation real fast so that it's not so bad because I don't want other people to make that mistake.
I'm gonna go ahead and put it.
I need to fix a lot of stuff here.
We can put it on Slack or.
Yes. All right, I need to update more stuff in here too, but this is enough for now. Come on.
Always I don't have to switch the version of Node.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to switch the version of Node anymore on your system. You should be using the latest version of Node from now on. That's a good note for me to put in here too, because I think I can fix that. Whatever, I don't care. Why isn't it saving my change? Save already. Oh, shoot, it saved all that stuff. I didn't want all those other ones saved. Oh well. There we go. Now my project shouldn't be telling you to go pull down somebody else's stuff anymore. If you refresh this page. Aha. Solved. All right. So for those of you who are already at the point where you've got this stuff, do you have your tests failing?
Yes. Looks like Alex,
What's that?
Alex, that all the tests
All your tests pass. Okay. Just making sure she's running the right command. So this is going to be a little different workflow than you're used to. for anything, but this is I hope it won't be too cumbersome. What you should see are just these failing tests for what's going on. I'm going to show you a couple other things in a minute that you can also use as you're working through this stuff. But once you get your project up and running, inside of the source folder, you should have a props folder. And inside of there, you should have an exercises and exercises final. Don't open exercises final. It's the cheat sheet. It's got all the answers. I mean, I'm not, this is not an attempt to like force you guys to do anything. You can look at it if you want, but that's just a fully implemented version of each project. So inside of exercises, these are the things that the tests are running against. And it should have notes telling you what you need to do to pass the tests. So there should be some comments in each one of these that sort of explains what you need to do to get your tests passing for any given file. npm run tests. Yeah. If you're ever unsure of what to run, you can go into there's a couple ways, but as I talked about before, you can go into the package JSON and look at the scripts. It's a little busy, but that's how you can see test. Or you can also do from a command prompt or a terminal. If you're in the right folder, you can do npm run and it'll list anything that you can run along with what it means to run that. So you can sort of see them all here. So if you're like, is it test or tests or what is it? You can check. And remember, don't worry about breaking stuff, right? If you break anything in it, just blow it away, pull down a new version of it from GitHub and work from there. So if you're like, oh man, this package JSON file is really cool. I want to go in there and tinker with something or try some of these other commands or do something else. Give it a go. You're not going to ruin anything permanently. That's why you're running in Cloud9. It's like we put you in a padded room.
How do you blow something away and start anew?
What I would do is just make sure you're not running anything and get out of the folder in any terminals you're in. So like navigate back to your home. And the easiest way to navigate back to home is don't try and like do ... to move down, but just do early and that'll take you back to your home folder, which actually it looks like it's even lower than your workspace. So maybe you don't want to do that because that was even below the workspace folder. But once you don't have any terminals in there, then you can just delete it over here. Like just right click and delete. Or you can delete it from the terminal by doing like rm -rf and then the folder name.
And then you just
And then you can just git clone again. Yep.
Did you figure out why she passing that?
What's that?
Did you figure out why she
I have not figured it out. Our tests are passing. I don't know why.
Maybe she put with steps.
Were the tests passing for the people who had accidentally pulled down the wrong repository before?
No.
No? They were failing. Okay.
I think the failing test I have to run npm and select option A.
Oh, yes, yes. That's a good point.
Oh, yeah, okay.
When you run the tests, at first, no tests will even run. You need to press A. Yeah, that's a very good point. So you have to press A to run all the tests. Because at first, if you want to know what your options are, you can press this W button, but it'll tell you. So this is, we haven't really gotten into how to write tests and what that means. And so we can talk a little bit about it, but I don't want to get into it too much right now. But if you're interested, you want to learn more about it, all of this code exists in this other folder. And the tests are sitting in a test folder here. And you could start looking at them and go in here and see what's going on. It may not be the easiest code to read though, because I'm not writing this for you guys. I'm writing this just to get the tests to pass. So I'm just probably using different syntax than I'm using in class. But what this is going to do is basically render like a component and verify that it produces the expected output when that happens.
It's the dot dots in the flash, that's staying within this folder, within the folder, within the folder, within.
That's saying from where this is, go up a folder, and then go up a folder, and then go up a folder. So actually it's here. So I was wrong. Here's where it was. So up a folder, up a folder, up a folder. And now you can go down a folder and then down a folder because props, and then down a folder and then into here. So yeah, it's a pretty awkward bit of navigation. But that's, I mean, this is what the test is running. And what we're using as a test runner is known as Jest. And so it gives you this nice sort of capability to run tests. So if you're looking at your options, you can say only run tests related to changed files by pressing O, or U to update failing snapshots. Don't do that because that will probably make all your tests pass, or most of them, and you won't have actually passed your tests. So that's a little bit of a cheat. But I think, I'll press enter to trigger a test run at that point. So yeah, so I'll run all the tests. So once you're at this point, as I was saying, you should be able to go and open up these files from inside of the source in the exercises. And each file provides hopefully an explanation of what you need to do to pass your test. Sort of telling you what is expected. And each one of these is trying to capture some different aspects of working with props in different ways. So the hello basic thing. Child is the idea of passing child elements. Jumbled, all of the code is in here. This file or this Xmin or whatever component has all of the code in it that it needs. They're just, the lines are in the wrong order. So that might, if you're a little stumped by some of the other ones, that might be a good one to start with, because all you have to do is figure out how to reorder the lines to make it correct. And then ingredients is the idea of creating a component that's used in another component like repeatedly and rendered with different outputs. But yeah, this is so my goal is, I want people to try, probably start with the hello, and hopefully you guys can work through this and try and get something to pass. And let me show you real fast another tool that you can use as well. So this isn't perfect, but it does exist. So if you have a different terminal that's not running the test, if you open another terminal window, or if you quit your tests if you want to, then you can do npm run start. And what this should do, cross our fingers that this works correctly on Cloud9, is start up a development server, and we can open this. Preview probably won't work because it didn't last time, did it? Yep. So we'll open it in a new tab instead. And what you should see here is this is a little bit of a file to sort of show you what the final implementation of something looks like. But your stuff doesn't have to use the exact same property or the exact same parameters necessarily. So it sort of shows you like, oh, a final implementation of this hello one should print out like hello and then sort of the name. Or the child one is sort of showing an example output of what it could look like given some input. Or jumbled blows up. All right. I do not know what I broke there. Oh, yeah, that's because I guess I know what I broke. I'm not gonna be able to. What I broke was that the one that's out of order, it tries to render both your implementation and the final implementation. So that one failed because your implementation blew up because it's jumbled and out of order. So you're not going to be able to click that and see that. But you can see like the last one, this ingredients one. But those are just references. Those aren't like it's not saying hard code this text in or something. It's just a reference example of rendering the components. Yeah, let's talk with each other if you're stuck, but let's try and work through, and then we'll see if we want to talk about anything else more advanced or play with something else in class today. Let's try and work through at least this hello example. I just want to make sure there's a part of me that's not certain how easy this stuff is going to be to work either. So let me know if it's proving to be really difficult to work with, really hard to understand what's going on. But let's try and work through the say hello example. And then once you've got that passing, let me know, or if you have any questions, talk to somebody around you or ask me, ask for any help you need on it. I'm gonna go over here to see if anyone has any questions. Yeah, you got the errors. Are we applauding errors? That's weird. We're applauding that we got errors. Yay, we got the errors.
Get a new error that's better.
Over by I don't know, we were not quite downtown, but back those. It's square, and it's quite a big, right in the square, yeah.
Oh, you saw her.
I didn't write, at first I was looking up at the menu and I'm like, and then I'm like, what do I want? And I'm like, I want to try this. And then I saw someone else. And then suddenly I look over and I'm like, oh, hi. I was like, I completely didn't notice. Laura was there. Ice cream is like the best thing in the world. So, you know, I was like, focus on the ice cream, focus on the ice cream.
How did you get?
I got, what was it? It's like a weird one. Like a salted caramel cookies and cream or something like that. I don't know. Yeah. And then I got Carolina Crunch, which was good. That's like, I don't know, like butterfinger and Heat bar and like something else. Just like ice cream. Yeah. I was just like, oh my gosh, I didn't. I'm so sorry.
I got problems.
You got
I
problems.
got problems with with Amazon. So I don't even know if I'm in like the right place anymore. So I set up my Cloud9, and now tonight it keeps crashing.
Did you get an invitation?
No.
Oh shit, I didn't.
I already have I just made one. I'm already an Amazon customer. But I don't know if that I'm like I don't know what to do.
They just, so I have noticed myself that Cloud9 can be flaky in terms of
So
performance.
yeah, maybe it's just
And sometimes,
internet connection or
and it's not always just Cloud9, sometimes it's here. So maybe try, like, sometimes it might be Wi-Fi or something.
yeah.
So here, let me do this. Try, we've got a ridiculously long cable
Okay,
here.
Let's try that.
Can you plug in? Do you have a,
Yeah, I do have one.
I'm like, I can't remember which,
I think I have one. Uh-oh.
I can't remember which ones actually have an adapter and which ones don't, see?
I do not. I thought this computer did.
Let me check, I might have I may have an adapter.
Okay.
You need an invitation.
Well, not on me, I don't think.
All right, let's see. Maybe there's another issue I can try to get around.
Nope. Yeah, sometimes I've noticed the Wi-Fi here can be a bottleneck as well.
Yeah.
I think Cloud9 is very bandwidth heavy in terms of what it sends.
So.
Yep. Has anyone gotten the say hello to pass yet? No? Anyone having problems or stuck on anything?
I think I got it passed before I crashed and burned.
I hope so. My goal here is this will be like the way that we'll do a lot more hands-on examples, right? Working through stuff like this. And then if I make this process a little easier, maybe some of the other experienced people might be able to contribute some tests as well. But right now it's a little bit of a pain to add tests to it. I need to write some, change some of the utilities and streamline it a little more. This has got to be the most boring video for anybody who's going to watch it later. You probably had 5 minutes of silence now, you know? It'd be really nice if there was a button on YouTube that lets you skip large blocks of silence. Like, oh, there's no talking. I just want to skip over all this. But there's not. Plus now I'm filling it with all this filler text, you know? And so you wouldn't be able to skip over this anyways if it did have such a button. So I'm sorry if in the future they make that button and you're watching this and you're trying to do that because I just ruined it for you. This is just Jared train of thought time. You know what I really want? I really want to combine Alexa with audiobooks So when I'm listening to an audiobook, I can tell it to bookmark what I was just listening to, and it'll bookmark like the last 30 seconds of that. Because how do I bookmark stuff when I'm listening to an audiobook? I don't. It's so annoying.
Can't you just build that?
I mean, maybe.
Get a Alexa developer kit.
But I don't listen to them through Alexa, and I just need stuff like that. I don't know. You have no clue what you're doing?
And so it's like I can't remember anything.
That's why I'm trying to get these exercises in place.
That's good.
What?
Feels good when everybody says that.
Yeah, there you go. See?
I don't
It's
know.
good to express that so other people also go, oh, it's not just me.
There's like not like an error, but I know I'm not doing it right because it's not showing the name.
All right,
It just says hello. Have to figure out what.
that's fine. Do we want to try and work through this together?
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
All right. I feel like we've given a decent chunk of time. We can try and work through this together. We could also cheat. We'll see what happens. We'll see if I build it the same way that I built it last time after we build it. So let's try and solve this together. Then I'll leave the other ones for people to work on their own. We can talk about them in the next class, see how they went, or please talk about it on Slack if you're stuck, because I'm sure other people will be too. Hey, I figured out how to solve it without reading the exercises final. All right, let's try and work through this. So we got a couple notes here. This says return JSX that uses the first name and last name values from the props argument. Assuming first name equals John and last name equals Doe, it should render hello John Doe in a div without the quotes. All right. And then this is export an example that specifies the first name and the last name as props to the say hello component. So I'm going to work this backwards, actually. I'm going to first change this code here to use the say hello component. Do you guys remember how do I invoke a component instead of a div? I just put say hello. Oops, that was more than I wanted to delete. I don't know if this will even work. Hope it won't. All right, we'll do it this way. And yep, say hello. All right. And one thing I mentioned here was I didn't mention anything about rendering content inside of it. So what I'm going to do is make this a self-closing call to this component. Now we could have it, we could do it a different way, but this is how I'm going to do it. There's no rule that says this is the only way to accomplish this. All right, and then it says we want a first name and last name property. So how do I pass a property into a component?
I think this is where I actually try to do it with the squiggly braces, like call it, instead of changing it to say hello, I just left it as div, and then I did within the brackets for the div, I tried to call to say hello.
So you were trying to do this, right?
Yeah.
You were doing like, hold on,
And it was like, it called it.
say hello.
But then it didn't put the other stuff. And then it put example inside the parentheses, so it's completely wrong. But that's probably exactly what's wrong. Instead, it should probably be, was it say hello as your tag? And then first name equals John, last name equals Joe.
And it's gonna be self-closing. First name equals, these could be anything in this case, but this is our example, so we can do
My brain's on vacation.
John Doe. I'm gonna try and mess with your mind in a little while if I can, but. All right, so we've got, there we go, we've got a bit of code. Now what you wanna get into as a workflow when you're doing this is practice now I can save it. And what you're gonna see is, it's telling you all these tests still failed. And we could change this. So it will. So if we change this if we press O, this will be a little bit easier for us instead. because it'll only run tests related to changed files. As long as you have your test thing running there and you haven't quit it, it'll happen. So now if I change this file and I change, alter it in some way, let me actually change it in a way that'll matter. Now it'll recognize a change, I think. So it ran this test, but I think it ran only this test instead of all of them. So it only reran this one test. It's telling you everything's still failing, but only this one test reran. And if you really want to narrow it down and focus just on this test so that you're not seeing the extra tests, there's these, if you look, it gives you some extra steps here, right? You could do something like filter by a file name regex pattern or something. So if we want to filter, you could say like 0, 1. And so now it's only running the tests for this one that we're on because this is 0, 1. So you won't see the errors for your other tests. So now we can sort of begin to see what's going on. Like it expected something to match a snapshot. So it expected div hello Jildo, but instead it says I got a div, replace this with the expected text, which is what I have right here.
Why did you say
That's just because that's what I chose to pass in as the parameters. I can test it with any parameters I want to, and I chose those for the test. Because I said John Doe before, and I'm trying to balance stuff out. What?
I thought
It can be Jane, it could be any of those work. It depends on, usually Jane is the first one, but then like if there's multiple, they'll change the names.
Mine isn't showing the last test. I typed out with that.
So if you hit W again and then do like try P after you've done that and just do like 0, 1. So you're only running the test for this one file.
Press P?
Yeah, once you've hit W, then you've got your list of options or whatever. You can press P.
Okay.
And then you can type in like the file you want to test and you can do like 0, 1 because this file is 0, 1 - hello. Or you could type hello if you prefer. And then you should only be doing one test for this one thing. So now we've got this. So what's our next step once we've got our example calling our say hello component? Now we've got to go up here, right? And now we want to use these properties in here somewhere. Any idea where we want to put those?
I put it in the text with the new div. I did the hello.
In here?
And
So you got rid of this?
yeah.
All right.
And I did the squiggly
Squiggly.
props dot first name. And then the next squiggly. Proper name. Curly brace.
Curly brace.
Pass the test.
And we should be passing once we have that. So that's sort of a very basic version of props. Do people have their test passing? Yeah? What?
No.
Your spacing has to be correct too, so you need to include a space between the first and last name and space here. All right, and so once you've done that, you should definitely like go back to running all your tests or whatever to see your other failing tests, because you'll have that one passing now and your others are still failing. And then you can go into each one of these other files and see them. Now I'll show you real fast. As I said, try not to use this to spend the time struggling, but I'm not trying to hide anything from you. The props.final has an implemented version of the code, like functional version of it sitting in there for you to use. or to compare against, or if you're completely stuck, you can go take a peek. But I'd suggest you try and not do that and try and work through them because, or at least try and work through them first before you go over and look at that. And now I think this will work. I'm going to try something crazy here. I haven't tried this. Let me see if, let me try and do something nuts. I can't put it inside of the div like you did. This will still fail, I think. But let's see how it fails. Let's see what happens. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's see what happens. I'm going to call say hello. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pass it an object with the first name. And a last name property. And let's see what happens here. Passed.
This is making me very nervous. So that's another way to do it, to pass.
You shouldn't do that in general, but yeah, because this is just a function. And so in this case, we're just invoking the function and putting what came back from it right here as a result. But that syntax is definitely nowhere near as nice as this other syntax, and that only would work for a function-based component. For a class component, oops. Because with the class components, obviously you'd have to like create an instance of it or something and call it the render, and then you wouldn't be using your React lifecycle correctly. So, you know, I mean, don't get hung up on bits of syntax when you can think through it. Since it's just a function, it can just be invoked as a function. It just returns some JSX, which is just being rendered somewhere. It's just a little different than you might expect. All right. Awesome. So yeah, I'm gonna, between now and the next class, I want people to work through these other 3 examples. I hope to add more. Feel free to, I really want to encourage people to ask about topics that they've been confused by or want extra examples on or want clarity on, because I'm trying to create a list of those and add examples, exercises around this. So I've got a few more exercises that I do want to add in. I might put those in a separate folder or something, so that, because the way you'll get this is by pulling down an updated version of this repository. And when you do that, it'll overwrite any of your existing stuff. But yeah, I've got a few more props ones. Then I want to have some state ones, some click handlers, a lot of class component ones as well. And hopefully I can streamline the process of creating them, because it's a little bit cumbersome right now for me to write them. But yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure we got working today. I didn't know how long this would take or if we would get stuck on anything. But I wanted to get people starting to work through more hands-on exercises of this. So
So is the child one like same as the hello one?
they're very similar.
I feel like it's a trick.
There's no trick. There shouldn't be a trick. It's very similar. It's just a little bit different. It's getting people comfortable with the idea of children as a component or as a property, children as a property that you're working with. And so it shouldn't be, you know, if you're pretty comfortable with the first one, it shouldn't be that hard to work through the second one. All right, we got a little bit of time left. Does anybody have any topics they wanted to go over again, talk about? wanted to get a preview of how to do something else in React that you don't have an answer to yet?
I have lots of questions, but I mean, so one of the things I'm trying to think about is how to use state. I was trying to build something very simple that would take. I do a lot of work with WordPress, so with the WordPress API, you can get anything that is on a WordPress site in JSON. So I'm trying to build something very simple that will take. I just copy and paste JSON articles, and then use React to build a setup where you can like click a button and load. So I have like a very rough kind of working example of code.
Sure.
I'm trying to figure out like how to use state, like when to use it and what to use it for, and I feel like I'm definitely struggling a little bit with how the pieces still fit together.
Right. I think that's one of the biggest obstacles people have when they're especially picking up React is working with state and how it fits together with things. So I'm trying to think. I mean, we're definitely going to do more with the, I'm gonna exit out of this right now. So we're going to be doing a fair bit more with our clock. Actually, I think I have it over here, don't I? That's different. None of those are what I want. Are you open still? Maybe you're not. Maybe I closed you. No, that wasn't it. Maybe it was this. No, that's it. I don't know where it went. Oh, there we go. It is all the way over here. We're going to be working with our clock more, where we'll be able to talk about state a fair bit. But let's play with it a little bit right now with the time that we have, and then we can. You know, this isn't anything I'm going to post as the next step yet, but we can get some practice playing with some of this. All right, so let's see here. So I'm just going to start this. So then I should have this. All right. Uh-oh. We're going to disagree with each other now. Let me. Okay, this wasn't running. Is it still running? Let me check. Nope, I don't have anything running for this. Good. I'm going to close this. Fast minimize it at least. So we've got this very simple React clock example, right, where we had like the ability to remove it, and we put that up here in the like app.js. But we're not really holding on to the state inside of this guy yet. So it's the type of question you have is usually what you do when you're thinking about something is over time, you sort of move data up. Like you could think of it as moving state up the stack of your component tree and pushing props down. So let's say we do have our clock and we want to, what do we want to do? Let's do something pretty simple. Let's add a button to this that can save the output of the current time as a string or something. And we're just going to save the time that we have right now, right? So that's not exactly the same thing that you have, but it's getting sort of close, right? So the first thing we have is we need to think about what we want component-wise, right? Is we say, okay, well, what we need is some sort of button that we can click to perform an action. And in this case, I'm going to put this button in our clock component as opposed to anywhere else. Because right now the clock is the component that has our our time. So it's the thing managing this state of what our time is. So it's what we can get this data out of, right? So I couldn't have this button at the app level because the app itself doesn't have access to the current time. That's being managed in here. At least right now it is. So is that a button? We'll call it a type equals button, which doesn't matter in this case, but that's so that if you were inside of a form, it wouldn't submit the form. Because by default, the button will submit a form if you don't give it something like that. And then we'll just say save time is what it does, right? So we're gonna walk through this step by step, building this out. So first thing is I'm like, okay, I've got a button here that says save time, but it's not doing anything yet. So does anyone remember how to add an event handler to something in React? We've done it a couple times. On click, yep, it's on click, and it uses camel case, so it's on click. And you notice I've got some nice useful plugins here that help me out there. On click, I want to do something, but I don't know. I know I want to save my current time. So let's add a method to our class here that is save time, save current time. All right. And this is going to get, it doesn't matter because I don't care about it, but we're going to make this will actually be what gets called, so it gets the event information if we needed it. So what I want to do is call this when I click this button here. So I can have that working just fine, and we can test it. This dot state dot date time dot toLocale time string. It just sort of, we don't have it actually doing anything yet, but act like we do. Open up our inspector so we can see our console here. And we can see, yep, we got a problem. Cannot read properties, state of undefined. Anybody remember what we need to do if we want to refer to this inside of a method? Yeah, our little magic bind line, right? And yes, I am intentionally making that mistake over and over so that we're reinforce it for you guys too. Because you're going to make it a lot if you don't decide to write code using a different syntax that you don't have to do that, but that isn't 100% standard yet. All right, so now we have that. So let's see what happens. Save time. Cool, so we know we're calling our button, or our button's getting clicked, we're calling our event handler. That's great. Now what we could do if we wanted is we could render that time or save that time right here. And then render all of those times that we've saved. I'm going to step over here for a second. So if we wanted to do that, that's not too hard. What we can do here is say, let's add a saved times item to our state, which initially is just an empty array. And then how do we update our state? Set state. And we only need to change our saved times item. So what do we want to put inside of saved times? The times that I saved. So if this is one time I'm hitting the button, what do I want to put in here right now?
Is it what you put inside console log? This dot state.
All right, let's give that a shot. Let's see what happens. It's not far off. I don't know.
All right.
And maybe let's heck, let's just save the whole object so we can re-render whatever thing we want off of it, right? So now we're sort of saving it in this saved times, or at least that's what we think we're doing. So now how do we want to get that out? What do we want to do with that? Now you guys haven't written a lot of stuff like this. Some of the examples that we have for the tests give you some references for rendering, say, an array of things or something like that. But let's say this component wants to render all of those. It wants to do it after the, the button or something. So you've got this very obvious separation. So we could have a separate, let's call it an unordered list that we'll put these in. And then what we want to do is render a bunch of list items, one for each saved time or something. So there's a lot of ways to write this out that could be done. One of them would be, and I am a pretty big fan of using methods that take in the arguments that you need, but splitting stuff off into methods. And you might see why over time. I think you'll get a feel for why I like to do stuff like this. A lot of times people will just inline something right here to do this, but a lot of time I will create what I call like sub-render methods. So let's assume that we're getting this time object in here, and this is almost like a render function or a function component. So all we want to do from this is return what we want to render for this time. Any idea what we want to render each time this gets called?
Be an LI.
List item.
Yeah.
All right. And then what do we want to put inside of here? I mean, maybe this, right? I don't know. Or it doesn't have to be all, it's a little different. Like time dot to locale time string or something, I don't know, right? All right, so we've got a sort of like this sub render, if you will, that we can leverage. So now what we could do here is, assuming that we have an array for a value of saved times, this dot state dot saved times map. So what that's going to operates on each item in your array and returns a value for each one of them. And what we can pass in as our callback is render saved time. So render saved time is going to get called with each item in the array, past that item's entry, and then return a list item. All right? You see a problem? So let's see what happens with this. I'm gonna click save time. We blew up. This dot state dot save times dot map is not a function. All right. Well, what's interesting there is you notice we didn't blow up before we clicked the button. We were just fine until we tried to save a time, which means it was calling this just fine. So map was a function, and then suddenly it became not a function after we saved our time. So something we did when we saved our current time broke us. Any guess what broke our code here? We had an array, and then we replaced our array value with this object. So we don't have an array anymore. We've got an object, and that object doesn't have a map function, so we blow up. So instead, what we need to do here is we need to use our existing thing. So this dot state dot saved times dot push, or something like that, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this. You really don't want to push something because then you're mutating your array. So this is a little, the syntax here might be a little cumbersome. Actually, can I do it this way? I think I can. So this is going to be a little weird, but it's a little bit cleaner syntax. So this dot state dot saved times. What I'm going to do here is a dot dot dot. So I don't know if you guys have encountered any of this, but what this is doing, I could write this out in a more long form fashion, but what this is going to do is take whatever was in this array, all the items from that array, and add them to this new array that I'm creating. And then add this after that, all of those. So it's known as a spread operator. I think this should work. We're going to find out. We could write it out a different way as well, where the traditional way is to do like array dot slice, which gives you a new array of all the items that you had. So let's see if this works. All right, so that's not the same problem. That's our stuff didn't quit rendering. We are rendering over here. We got our list item. It's just yelling at us about each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key property. I don't know if we've talked a lot about that. You can click through and read about it, but what that means is every item that gets rendered when you do something like this should have a key property on it. So in this case, I'm just going to set the key to, I don't know, the time is too much. So instead, I'm going to set the key to this, same thing that I'm doing there, so that it'll be a unique value. And that should get rid of that error. And we're saving off each time that we click this now. So yeah, this syntax is probably something new that you haven't seen. Yes?
Can you explain just that syntax again? Because you were talking about how it was creating a new array out of an old array or something like that.
Sure. Sure. Let me here. Let me pull over to here. I think it'll be even easier here. So if we were to look at like let's create an array. Var list equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now let's do something called, I don't even know if this will work. Hold on a second. I need to check the signature of something. Okay. So let's say we want to add an item to this array. The typical way that you would do that is you would push something onto it, right? But you're not really ever supposed to change the value of anything in your React state. You're supposed to assign it a new value. And so let's six. So what do we think is in new list now? It's not, and it's actually a little misleading here. Unfortunately, let me try this. I'm going to reassign it. New list equals list.push 10. So I'm pushing the value 10 to the end. New list is 7. That's because when you do a push, you're actually just, it returns the new length of the array, not a new array. So if I say new, it's a little hard to figure out how to do this. Var list equals 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've created list, right? And I'm going to say new list equals the list. Oops. So new list is 1, 2, 3, 4. List is 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if I do list.push 5, we know what list is. What do you think the value of new list is? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. because they point to the same, they refer to the same thing. They're not copies, so they're references to the list. Yes.
Like a weird thing with the UL element. Doesn't used to be Fountain and Wilson Tech, but there's a program.
Is this in one of the exercises, or I'll come over and look at it in just a few. But yeah, what I'm getting at here is, see, we didn't create a new array when we used push. So we're mutating that existing value instead of creating a new array. And that's not really what you want to do. So instead, there's this other syntax where we could do like new list equals, and if we did ... list 6, then what it does is it takes all of the items out of the list, it spreads them into a new array, which we're defining using these brackets. This is saying this is a new array, and it starts with everything that was in this array, and then add this other item. So now new list is this, but list didn't change. So we have two different arrays. So that's what that was doing, is it's a very shorthand notation to create a new array with everything from an existing one and something else. The traditional way to do it, because this is modern JavaScript syntax, is I think slice. I'm going to double check here. New list equals list dot slice. I think 0 is all I need. Let's see. New list. So let me try this. So you can see that it says new list isn't the same as the list, even though they have the same values in them. That's because it's actually a new array. So now if I did like new list dot push 6, it's going to have those, but list didn't change. So that's the traditional way to do it, because slice gives you a copy of an array. And when I said 0, all I was saying is start at 0 and go to the end of the list, essentially. But yeah, that's what that was doing.
So in the clock, in that function, yeah, so when you're setting a state of save time inside of save current time, you're creating a new array over and over.
Yep, every time you click it.
A new array that becomes the updated state of save times.
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, essentially it's cloning the array. Yeah. So yep, that's what's happening. I actually don't even know if it would work if you tried to just push onto the end. I think it would not do what you want. I could be wrong, but so we've got it working here, right? But this, one of the interesting things, like I don't want to go too long, but this clock is getting really complex now, right? It's doing a lot of things. It's managing this current, what's saved. It's managing that. It's got the button in it. It's showing the maps of all these. There's a lot of did something different and pulled all of that out. So the common approach here is, you sort of want to have your components be a little more isolated. And so what if instead these save times, what you would be doing if you were trying to do something like this, more frequently, is we'd step up to the app level, and this would have the state of these saved times. And then I can show you a little bit about this. I don't know if I can get this done in a little bit of time that we have, but what would be very common is you say, okay, well, this app is now going to have some state. Yeah, if I can spell. So it's going to call it super, and now it's going to have some state of saved times instead of it being up at the component level. And what we're going to do here is pretty much move this up, if you will. going to copy it real fast first, but pretty much move this up here because, okay, well, we want to save them up here instead. So what do I need to add to my constructor since I'm referring to this in there? My magic bind line. But I can't refer to it using this dot state dot date time anymore, right? Because that's the state. That's the reason we didn't put it in the app originally, was this guy isn't the thing that has the time. It's in our clock component, right? So instead, let's change the way this works. Let's pass the time into save current time. Let's make that an argument to this. So this is pretty much just a function. It could almost live anywhere except for the fact that it's modifying this state. And now we're just going to say, all right, well, we save our time here. And, well, this has this dot state dot saved times because it's up there. And then what we want to add to that is the new time. So we have save current time in here now, which is great, but it's not going to be used. So how can we get this called in our clock instead of the clock managing its own state there? Any ideas? How do we pass anything into our clock when it renders? We give it a prop, right? So let's give it a on-click prop, or maybe a save time prop. I don't know. And what that prop is going to be is just a reference to this method here. So literally all we're doing is passing a reference to this function into our clock. So now it has a new property that it can use. So now if we come in here, we want our button to work a little bit differently. So maybe it can still call save current time here. But in here, we now need to save that time not into this guy, but into our parent component. And since we have a property that lets us do that, what can we change in here to make that happen? We can refer to our prop, just like anything else. Save time. Oh, what did I call it? Save time. Or maybe I'll call it on save time. So it sort of implies this is handling something. So I changed the name of it a little bit. So this dot props dot on save time. What do I want to pass into this? What? What does it take as a property? It takes a time. So what should I pass into it?
This dot state dot date time.
That date time, which is just our time. Really just calling a function at this point. So we just pass this into it. And I think we still have some stuff that's not going to work, I know. But I think we should be fine, at least functionally. Like we're not breaking. And we're logging that we're saving our time here when we click it. But we're not rendering anything new. Any guess why we're not rendering anything new yet? Well, we're still trying to render off of our local saved times and not something getting passed in. So let's get rid of this because we're not saving this in this object anymore, or our state. And instead, we need to pass those in. So we have on save time. What should we name our other property that we want to pass in? We can call it whatever we want. We could call it saved times equals this dot state dot saved times. And then over here in our clock, this dot props dot saved times. All right, let's see if this works. There we go. So if you follow what's going on now, when our app component renders, it passes in on save time as a property into our clock. And that is just a reference to a method inside of itself. And it also passes in the array of the times that we've saved. But by passing in a reference to a method on itself, it can now manage the state instead of the clock needing to manage the state. So the clock no longer needs to manage this state. And instead, it can just call back to it, passing in its own state. So that's the way, if you have any state in like a child component, because it makes sense for it to own that state, but you want to pass it back to a parent somehow, this is the most common pattern for getting that state passed back up to a parent. Because the parent isn't going to be able to directly read that state from the child component without some ugly hacks or ugly code that you usually don't want to write. This is the much more common way to do it. Parents pass props down to children, and they pass callbacks a lot of times down to children, and children call back to those callbacks with information. Does that make sense? Now, in reality, and I'm going to stop here because I don't want to go any longer on this, but you'd start looking at this and you could say, is this clock still only doing one thing, or is it still doing more than one thing at this point?
Still doing more than one thing.
Still doing more than one thing. Like what?
Button could be a different
Button
component.
could potentially be a different component. And heck, rendering the list could be different. And here's where we get to something really interesting too, is does this clock even really need to, is there a reason if we do that and we get to that point, so it doesn't have a button, we pulled that out, and the list, maybe we can do that somewhere else. Then is there really a difference between the clock that we're rendering here and these list items that we're rendering for each time? There's not much of a difference, really. At that point, it's almost the same thing, just maybe a little bit different way that it's viewed. So we might be able to lift even all of that up and create a like clock component that doesn't have state itself. It just gets the time passed into it that it's going to render. And so then it can render in different sort of styles or whatever and can be reused very heavily. Or we could do it without that. We could also do it this way very easily, where we could say like, this is me doing something fast. Function, like, I don't know. Actually, I won't solve all of it, but this render saved time, maybe I can get close. Let me see here. I'm gonna take all this out. We can get pretty close. We can get pretty close. Get rid of my button. And get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. got a div with some bits here. Clock render, it just gets some props passed into it. It's just a function. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, instead of calling this dot render saved time, well, I guess I will leave that there. It's just going to be a little weird. This now is going to return this list item with the key, and then inside of here, I'm just going to do the clock render and give it the time. I think this will work. So you start to see where we can re-render those things, and you notice we had a problem with the key because the key actually wasn't specific enough. So it's like, shame on you. We can make this key something that is specific enough, and I'm not worried about that right now. But now that clock render, well, we could probably reuse it even right here to render this top level bit, and you begin to pull out stuff to create these reusable components that can be used in different places. So. I don't know if that exactly answered your question, but I was trying to show you a little bit of how you would think about that stuff.
Can you, I don't know if you have this code somewhere else, but can you send this around?
Yeah, I can save this off as a, I might tweak a tiny bit, but I can save this off as a different branch. So I'll save it as a different branch in our clock repository, and then you can check out that branch as just sort of a, you know, a goofing off branch. It won't be one of the ones in our pipeline. We're going to get to something like this. So this is a little bit of a preview of probably almost our next step, because I want to start getting to the point where we can start saving certain things, right? Like do a little bit more stopwatchy type action. But we won't work through it quite as fast when we do that. And now I'm burning up, so I'm ready to get out of here. I don't know about you guys, but I'm melting. You're comfortable? Let me fix my, let me fix what I have over here.
And I could, yes, I will email it, usually send it out to students. So, yeah, I will do that to those hiring.
So I don't know if this is either some that you can sign up for, but
Yeah.
your setup is.
I want to see my methods. What methods do I have here? Oh, I need to end my live stream. Sorry, end the live stream.